Geoff Mosher, getting the number 1 seed, home field advantage, and then you can really look at yourselves in the mirror and say, we're a legitimate Super Bowl contender.
You know, it's funny, Mike, and, good afternoon, Mike, Pete. Always good to talk to you guys. It's funny that you kind of had a Freudian slip there and said something about the game being tonight, because this has been the longest wait for a Dallas game that I can ever remember. Tom Petty got it right when he said waiting is the hardest part, because it's like you're almost running out of ways to talk about this game. But as you're saying, Mike, you win this game, and there's just so much more at stake. There's a bigger prize here, knowing that the schedule shifts to the games against Seattle, the games against the Rams, right? Even that Christmas game against the Raiders, and then you've kind of got your eye on what the Vikings and the Saints are doing at the same time. You guys are right. I mean, listen, the division could actually be wrapped up by now, because a 3-game deficit is hard to bridge. But certainly the Cowboys have 2 games left against the Eagles, so if they win both of those games and play well without their stars, then they've got a shot. But no doubt about it, the Eagles go down there and win Sunday night. You can just say, all right, NFC East is the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's move on now. But certainly with some of those teams that are left, right, and New Orleans being really the big one, especially with their home field advantage, you want to set your focus now on how many games is it going to take to win to get home field advantage up into the Super Bowl.
Geoff, a couple bullet points on this game that we want to dive into that you wrote about this week at FanRag Sports. 1, Ronald Darby. Obviously, they made the trade because they thought they were deficient in that area. They end up getting Darby. He gets hurt in the first half of the first game of the season. His return appears to be imminent this week. What kind of boost does he give to a defense that really hasn't skipped a beat without him?
Yeah, no, it's funny. I mean, who would have thought that you'd be saying Ronald Darby getting him back is a luxury instead of a necessity at this point of the year? It really I think it can change the defense a little bit from what we've seen. Jim Schwartz has played a lot of off coverage, and because of that, and you look at the Eagles, and they've been great run defense, really good on third down. But if you look at their pass defense and yards per pass given up, they're a little bit more middle of the road, which is fine. It's fine. You got to be deficient somewhere, right? Jim plays a lot of off coverage, but they brought Ronald Darby in here to play a lot of man press coverage. So just think, if you have this defense being able to stop running backs and create these second and third and longs, and then you have a quarterback who's already hurried from the pass rush, now having to hold on to the ball a little extra second or longer because his number 1 target doesn't have the cushion that they've had in the past because Ronald Darby is sticking to him like glue for 1 or 2 seconds. Well, that means the quarterback either is going to get sacked because he has to hold on to the ball a little bit longer, or he's going to throw a ball that might get picked off. So the one area where the Eagles have been very good is pass rush as far as creating pressure. But from a sacks standpoint, they're very, very middle of the pack. Nobody has 7 or 8 or anything like that. I believe Darby's presence, coupled with the pressure that they get, may give them the opportunity to get more sacks and then create more turnovers in the process.
That's an interesting take, Geoff. Just real quick, I know Douglas has played really well. You've got Mills, who's obviously kind of a staple back there. Robinson's played great. Do you think moving Mills, and Schwartz kind of addressed this earlier in the week, but Mills has kind of been on that left side. Darby's going to go back to the left side. Now you're going to say to Mills, hey, man, we're going to have to slip you back to the right. I guess to the regular fan that seems like, what the heck's the difference? But are you concerned that they're going to be messing with some chemistry back there, man?
It's always a concern, Mike, but I mean, you're messing. It's we've had this conversation about whether when you pull Sam Alu and put somebody else in, or do you bring Jay Ajayi into a mix which already is pretty good and has some good running back power there. When the person that you're bringing in has a lot of talent, which Darby does, and he really fits the scheme, you take the upside and you deal with the downside if there is one, but you welcome the upside to it. So I think it's the smart move to play Darby and put him in his natural position, and you move Bills over, and I think no matter what, your defense is still strong because of it.
Hey, Geoff, you mentioned the pass rush a minute ago, and, of course, how strong they are on the defensive line. This will be the first chance that Tim Jernigan gets to play in a game since signing that extension. Not that he was going to give less than 100% had he not signed the extension, but, boy, getting a raise always puts a little bit of a fire underneath you. How do you describe what Jernigan's added to the defense, and especially his kind of relationship and pairing with Fletcher Cox and how they've paired together to be just dominant?
You know, it's amazing how many different guys can make you say wow on this defense in different ways, right? Now, the thing that to me that really stands out about Jernigan, and I'm sure you guys have seen like the clips throughout the year, he's got about 5 or 6 tackles on running backs with one arm, where he basically only needs one arm to throw a guy to the ground. I mean, he's just a vicious, barbaric tackler. And it's really cool to see a defensive lineman do that. I feel like in general, this D-line kind of brings us back to the Buddy days where really good defensive linemen, mean, nasty bulldog type of defensive linemen who like to not just hit quarterbacks but throw them to the ground, and not hit running backs but one arm them to the ground. So he's really brought a tenacious edge to their run defense. And to be honest with you, he's a pretty good pass rusher. It's just he's on a defense with so many good pass rushing linemen that, you know, when Cox was missing those 2 games, he was part of the third down line. Now that Cox has come back for, you know, several weeks now, he's back to really just being a first and second down defensive lineman, which makes the contract really interesting, right? Because if you look, you say, man, he probably could have gotten more on the free agent market if he waited that long. But by the same token, he's getting paid now right at that B-plus level defensive tackle per year. You know, he's not making the 16 to 20, he's now making the 12 to 15 in his contract. So he's getting paid pretty good, and he's really only playing first and second down. He's in a big-time rotational tackle, so he's getting paid probably more than some guys who are rotational tackles. So that's a good in-between, but it makes me wonder if going forward next year, the year after, his snaps will increase, because I don't see how they're going to be able to have paid him. You know they paid Fletcher Cox. You know they paid Vinnie Curry. You know they paid Brandon Graham. And let's face it, Derek Barnett has to start next year. They're not going to bring the number 14th overall pick off the bench for a second straight year, especially when he's been productive. So someone's probably going to have to go and get their walking papers and become a cap casualty. It's not going to be Jernigan, so Jernigan's probably going to see an uptick in playing time next year. And if he continues to play well and, you know, almost reaches kind of like Fletcher Cox Jr. level, well, then $12 million a year is going to look really good for that kind of guy. It's going to be a discount.
Hey, you know, we talk about how well, Geoff, that Jernigan's playing, but is there a guy on the defense that maybe isn't playing their best football so far this season?
A guy who isn't playing their best football this season, man.
It's hard to find,
it wouldn't
right?
be anybody on the – yeah, I mean – oh, what are we going to do? We could single out Joe Walker and say, hey, you know, if you see a running back messed up on him, it's not a great situation. And obviously they brought in Donnell Ellerby, and we'll see what kind of action he gets. But I know. I think Patrick Robinson has played above expectation, especially after his training camp. Jalen Mills has certainly played above expectation. I think Rasul Douglas seems to get better every week and play with he at least plays with that edge that you knew drafting. He's a little grabby like most rookies are. He'll commit a PI, but he definitely plays with a good edge, as like he was drafted to out of West Virginia right there, Mike. So I really can't think. Yeah, McLeod has played well. Malcolm Jenkins has probably been their, if not best,
Geoff,
second best player.
Jeff, I think the point that he was, trying to get at there is, you've ever seen a team where not only the defense, but the entire team where nobody's having a down year. I mean, you could say Sayamala was the one guy.
I get what you're saying now.
But the whole defense and the team is – what's that?
I thought Pete was trying to rope me into Negadelphian here or something. That was wrong.
No, that was not my intent.
No, you're right. This is it's an unbelievably balanced team. I've been talking about this a lot lately. I don't remember even like the 2004 Eagles, right? You look at them offensively, and for the first 10 or 11 games, it was just this prolific connection between McNabb and T.O., and everybody else was okay, but T.O. gets hurt, and then it becomes all about Westbrook. But on this offense, it's just so balanced. I mean, last night Ben Roethlisberger throws 3 touchdowns to Antonio Brown, 3 of his 4, and that's what you get used to, Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown. But this offense and defense has so many different guys who play at high levels every game, if not, in the same game, that it's hard to even it's hard to even answer the question outside of Wentz, who's the MVP. You can literally go through 6 or 7 or 8 guys who have all had really big moments and stretches for this team.
My apologies for not making that more clear.
I knew his question better than even he did.
Hey, this one I'll make a little more clear. So the defense is getting so much attention, Geoff, and now, of course, the talk starts that, that means that Jim Schwartz is going to be an attractive candidate when the season ends for other head coaching jobs. Do you think Jim Schwartz is moving up the ranks then through the other teams? Now he's going to be a possibility of leaving because of the job he's done this season?
I think, Pete, it's possible. I think he's going to generate attention. I'm sure he has an agent who will make sure that attention is generated. But at the same time, if you look at the trend of hiring going around the NFL lately, it seems, more and more that coaches are getting younger and they're not, teams aren't going the quote unquote retread level and also I think teams really are trying to jump on offensive mind over defensive mind. So do I suspect that Jim Schwartz will get some interviews? Yes. Do I think that he will have some rivals, some younger offensive-minded rivals that he will have to try to overcome? A guy like maybe even won't probably fall under the category of retread. McDaniels, because of what he's done with that offense, will probably get a look. And you'll hear offensive names. I wouldn't be surprised, guys, if DeFilippo, the Eagles quarterback coach, John DeFilippo, got a little consideration because, again, that's just the way the league is going. It's a quarterback-driven league. They want offensive minds. They want young, they want the next Sean McVay. They want at least what they thought they were getting in Adam Gase.
I think we might have, Jeff, you there? I think we might have, we got you, Jeff?
I'm still here. You guys are?
Okay. Yeah, no, I hear you.
One thing to say.
Real quick. Well, I heard we're on location, so it's hard to hear a little bit. I heard a little, something. But one of the things we talked about with Schwartz, we brought this up the other day. There's about 7, 8, 9 teams that are probably going to be looking for coaches, and we're looking for teams that had offensive-minded coaches that could be fired. And a lot of the teams that could be looking for a new coach have offensive-minded coaches, and a lot of times they might look for a defensive guy. That's where I think Schwartz's name might come up a lot, from those teams that have offensive guys that might want to look to a defensive guy.
Give me an example, because I feel like the Giants and the Colts are teams that will look for an offensive mind over a defensive mind.
Let me, let's see. I like your question. The Colts have a defensive-minded guy already. That's why I'm saying they might go offense. Now, the Giants have an offensive-minded guy. You don't think they might, they had Coughlin before. You don't think they might go back to a defensive-minded guy?
Are they drafting Sam Darnold?
They are bad enough. They can probably fit themselves in that spot. All right, a couple other teams. All right, I like this game. Jeff Mosher's with us, FanRag
Am
Sports.
I the referee?
You just sit there and watch, PT.
Okay.
All right, these would be the teams I would think here. How about an offensive-minded coach that could be let go would be Tampa Bay?
Yes, I could see Tampa Bay moving forward with a new coach. I could definitely see that.
Okay. What about Arizona? Bruce Arians?
It's possible.
What? Arians?
Bruce Arians. That's another one, but are they really going to be back on Carson Palmer next, or are they going to be on, say, Josh Rosen?
So you were saying that if they go with a young quarterback, they might want an offensive-minded guy.
I would think so.
Okay. What about? Well, there was a bunch of them. I thought. Oh, Cleveland, Hugh Jackson.
Oh man, does Cleveland even count? Who knows? They'll hire a special teams, assistant coach.
Hey, it worked out for Baltimore.
Yeah, but speaking of Baltimore, that's a franchise that if they decided to move on from John Harbaugh, I could see them going with a defensive coach. So now Jim Schwartz has to fight it out with, say, Matt Patricia for the job.
What about I feel like we threw a bunch of these out the other day. I feel like there was a bunch of them that we kind of came up with, and that we said, man, a lot of these teams have offensive-minded coaches that might flip to a defensive-minded guy. But there's just a couple of Cincinnati's got a defensive-minded coach, but that's another spot if you look out in that direction that Cincinnati might make a change.
Oh, Cincinnati's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. I can see them going defensive-minded coach, and I could see them going Jim Schwartz. I mean, the Bengals are never afraid to take risks, and they're not afraid to have a little attitude, which is exactly what Jim Schwartz is going to have to kind of deal with as he goes to get that second head coaching job. The whole reputation that when he's the head honcho at an organization, he's got a little bit of a quirkiness to him that may not appeal to everybody in the building. So he'll have to battle that. But certainly the Bengals are the type of team that probably wouldn't be averse to that anyway.
All right, we got a little off track on the game. Let's get back into Eagles and Cowboys with Geoff Mosher here. You wrote about some of the areas where you think the Eagles can really take advantage of this Dallas team. And without Sean Lee, I didn't, think that there would be a spot on the team that you would go after more than where he's out.
I definitely agree. I wrote it earlier this week that, it's impossible to think that they're going to be as bad at left tackle as they were last week. Because even if they jog out somebody, like Byron Bell, who may not be much better than Chaz Green, they're going to protect that guy this time. They're not going to let that happen twice. Even Andy Reid didn't let Winston Justice happen twice. So they're going to do everything they can to scheme around their left tackle deficiency. I don't know how you scheme around a Sean Lee deficiency. You can't just put Justin Durant in there, I think that's his name, and say, okay, go play like Sean Lee. Or you can't stick 2 linebackers in place of 1 and say, all right, well, this is what we do, like you can do with a tight end or an extra tackle. He is. Right. They're not a great defense. They're a great front 4, and he is the straw that stirs their drink. I thought last year he should have been Defensive Player of the Year. I think he is the best linebacker in the game, the smartest linebacker in the game. And when you lose him, you guys saw when the Panthers lost Kuechly against the Eagles that night, they were a different defense. And I don't think that the Cowboys can be the same defense without him.
Yeah, there's no question that, and I got to be honest, this Marinelli, he deserves more credit than he gets, because for the last, really, going back to when they had DeMarco Murray, people will question that defense and said, man, their defense isn't very good, but their defense has not really been a reason why they've been mediocre this year. They won 13 games last year. I mean, their defense hasn't really hurt them.
No, it hasn't killed them yet. I mean, but they've had the benefit of having Zeke and a ball control offense, and being able to be off the field. And you're right, Rod Marinelli is no doubt about it. If he's not the best, he's top 3 assistant coach in the league. Not just even as a coordinator, but as a defensive line coach, because he gets those guys playing with so much tenacity. They get up on you quick. He's got DeMarcus Lawrence leading the NFL in sacks. A lot of people like to remember who DeMarcus Lawrence is coming out of college. I think it was a second-round pick even. So. He does the most with the least name value on the line. Although they got some picks now. They got Taco Charlton there, and they have another first-rounder. He finally has some really good talent, but that's why they're really good in the front 4. After that, though, it gets a little dicey.
Geoff, obviously, the Eagles added a weapon a couple of weeks ago. You saw it on display a little bit. 7 carries, the 46-yard touchdown. Is Jay Ajayi going to be a bigger focal point of this Eagles offense? Did they get him, after watching him one game, did they get him to be the featured guy over these last 7 games?
I'd be stunned if he didn't have at least 15 carries in this game coming up Sunday night. The only way he doesn't is if the Eagles somehow are down, a touchdown or 2 really early and they have to rely on the pass. But, with everything we just said about Dallas being vulnerable at the middle level and no Sean Lee, then I'd be stunned if Doug doesn't come out and try to establish Blunt and Ajayi really early.
The big factor in this game, when you look ahead to Sunday night, is the fact that the Eagles are going on the road, and a lot of times if you want to win those games, you've got to grind them out. And you wrote about LeGarrette Blunt, about, what kind of guy he is. We had talked a couple of weeks ago with someone, and they were saying, believe it or not, he's kind of a leader in there, that people kind of look up to him. He's won a Super Bowl. And if the Eagles, if this game's a close game, he becomes a very important guy in what this team wants to do. Those close January, December cold games, the, as you say, misunderstood LeGarrette Blunt, he might become a big factor.
Yeah, and then that's 2 different things right there, the leadership and then just the talent itself and what his role is. And I spent a good deal of time talking with Kenyon Barner earlier this week about LeGarrette Blunt because they were college teammates at Oregon. And I said to Kenyon, is this a different LeGarrette Blunt we're seeing? Because everybody has expected him to be a ticking time bomb at various parts of the season, whether it's having a bad preseason, getting criticized, or then not getting any carries against Kansas City. How's he going to react to that? And then having that huge game against San Diego and coming back the next week and only getting 14 carries. And then Jay Ajayi, and we know he has incentives in his contract. And every step of the way, he has just been professional and supportive. And you saw Ajayi scores a touchdown. The first person to greet him in the end zone is Blunt. And Barner was telling me that this has always been him. He's always a happy-go-lucky, goofy guy, very funny. And I said, well, let's be fair, though. There are about 3 or 4 incidents, from a couple of different teams that people remember. And he said, yeah, he made mistakes, but he's always been a very good teammate. And I think that's what you're seeing now. And Blunt stood in front of the cameras that same day and said, yes, I am a little bit different. I am more of a professional. I understand I can't control everything. So I think what you're getting is a combination of a guy who has grown up a little bit and is older and maybe in his last year or 2 and kind of just going with the flow and enjoying the fact that he's on an 8-1 team, combined with the fact that they're managing his reps perfectly. Last year he wore down in December. Last year he was not effective in December. I think the idea of them giving him between 13 and 15 carries. Everybody always says, let's get him more, feed him. I say no. I think they're absolutely using him perfectly, and I wouldn't change a thing.
I the way it's working. And you know what's funny? When he came here, you're right. He kind of had this disposition that he was kind of like, curmudgeon-y or whatever. But then early on in his time, I mean, he was at the Sixers game. He was out in the court shooting around beforehand. He seems like almost like a gentle giant kind of guy.
Well, like I said, I think he just is in a different mindset at this point of his career. He's won a Super Bowl ring. He's older. He comes off 18 touchdowns last year or something like that. I think he's really about just winning and being a good teammate. And, if they were 1-8, would things be different? Who knows? Maybe,
right.
Probably so. But they're 8-1, and, he's been a big part of that. And you're right, in the locker room, he's been a guy. I talked to like 5 or 6 different guys about him, not just running backs, and all of them said the same thing, that they were either pleasantly surprised or just happy with how the way he's assimilated. And a lot of them said they think that the locker room that the Eagles have has enabled that as well, is that there aren't selfish guys, there aren't me guys, so there's no bad influences.
Geoff Mosher, Philadelphia on the road Sunday night. Dallas has to save the season. Dallas have enough to scratch out an ugly win?
It's a division game, Mike, so I guess you always take into account that any given Sunday division game desperation. But I don't know. If they weren't playing the Cowboys, right, if they were just playing some other team that was missing 3 Pro Bowl players among its starting 22, do you think that people would be as worried about it or concerned as maybe we are about the Cowboys?
That's a good question. I don't know. You always have that feeling here around here that the other shoe's going to drop, right?
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, even, like the only team this year that I've seen overcome the loss of a Pro Bowl running back, a Pro Bowl left tackle, and then a really important middle linebacker is the Eagles. So I don't know.
And the kicker. Don't forget the kicker.
Oh, and the kicker. And listen, they lost McLeod for a game. They lost Fletcher Cox for 2 games. They lost Smallwood for 2 games. They lost Jalen Watkins and Corey Graham for 2 games, too. People forget all the injuries that the Eagles have withstood. It's not just 2 or 3 guys. It's been a ton. But I just don't know if Dallas has enough firepower, without Ezekiel Elliott and with a shaky left tackle. It's all on Dak's shoulders now. So he'll get his chance to prove whether he can really carry an offense the way Wentz has this year.
All right, Geoff Mosher, NFL on Twitter, FanRag Sports, Eagles, Cowboys, Sunday night here on 97.3. Geoff, take care, brother.
All right, guys. Catch up with you next week.